Daf Yomi, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 54a, top of the page, with the word Tanya. Tanya kavase de Rava ish prat likaton. It is taught in a Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rava with regard to the verse, and the man who lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Leviticus 20, verse 11. The term the man excludes a minor. Asher yishkav es eishes aviv, mashma ben eishes aviv shehi imoy, uben eishes aviv shelo imoy. Imoy she'ena eishes aviv minayin, tamid lo imal, vaz aviv gilo. Mufna lehakish, vilidun mimenu gzera shava. The phrase, who lies with his father's wife, indicates that he is liable to receive capital punishment, whether she is his father's wife, who is his mother, or whether she is his father's wife, who is not his mother. From where is it derived that he is liable in a case where she is his mother, who is not his father's wife? The verse states he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Although this phrase does not relate directly to the case of one's mother who is not his father's wife, the halacha in this case is derived from the phrase as it is free. The phrase is superfluous in this context and is evidently included in the verse in order to compare between the two cases and learn a verbal analogy from it, as the Braita will elaborate below. Mois yamusu b'skila, ata oimer b'skila, oy eno ela be'achas mikol mitzvot yamusu b'toira. Never kan demeim bam, never oy v'doini demeim bam, alahan b'skila kan b'skila. From the phrase, both of them shall be put to death, it is derived that they are executed by stoning. The Braita asks, do you say that they are executed by stoning, or is it rather by one of all the other types of death penalty that are stated in the Torah? The Braita answers, it is stated here, their blood shall be upon them, and it is stated with regard to a necromancer and a sorcerer, their blood shall be upon them, Leviticus 20:27. Just as there, the verse states that a necromancer and a sorcerer are executed by stoning, so too here, with regard to one who engages in intercourse with his father's wife, the transgressors are executed by stoning. Oynish shemanu azor minayin, tamid lo imal elvas avicha lo yisigale, elvas avicha zo eshes avicha. The Braisa asks, we have learned the punishment for one who engages in intercourse with his father's wife. From where is the prohibition against doing this act derived? The Braita answers, the verse states, the nakedness of your father and the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. Leviticus 18:7. The phrase, the nakedness of your father, is referring to your father's wife. Ata oimer eshes avicha, oyenu ela eshes elvas avicha mamish. Nemer kan elvas avicha lo yisigale, v'nemer halon elvas aviv gila. Ma lahalon be'ishu sakosov medaber, af kan be'ishu sakosov medaber. The Braita asks, do you say that the reference is to your father's wife, or is it rather referring to the nakedness of your father literally? Meaning, in other words, to homosexual intercourse with one's father. The Braita answers, it is stated there, the nakedness of your father you shall not uncover. And it is stated there, in the verse that describes the punishment, and the man who lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness, Leviticus 20:11. Just as there the verse is speaking of marriage, meaning it is not referring to the father himself but to his wife, so to here the verse is speaking of marriage, meaning his father's wife. Umashman ben eshes aviv shehi imoy, uben eshet aviv she'eno imo she'eno eshet aviv minayin, tamid lomar, ervant imcha lo tigale. and the verse indicates that one's father's wife is forbidden to him, whether she is his father's wife, who is his mother, or whether she is his father's wife, who is not his mother. From where is it derived that she is forbidden to him in a case where she is his mother, who is not his father's wife? The verse states, the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. The nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. Leviticus 18:7. Eli אלעזר שעשה כתוב עמו שאינו באשת אביו כי אמו שהיא אשת אביו עונש מנין. The Braita asks, I have derived only with regard to the prohibition that the verse renders the halache of his mother who is not his father's wife like that of his mother who is his father's wife. But with regard to the punishment, from where do I derive that they share the same halacha? Ne'emar kan ervas avicha lo yisgaleh, v'ne'emar lehalan ervat avicha gila ma'azar asa hakatuv imo, she'eno eshet aviv ki imo shehi eshet aviv, af be'onesh asa hakatuv imo, she'eno eshet aviv ki imo shehi eshet aviv. The Braita answers, expounding on the verbal analogy it mentioned earlier. It's stated here in the verse that describes the prohibition, the nakedness of your father you shall not uncover, Leviticus 18:7. And it is stated there in the verse that describes the punishment, he has uncovered his father's nakedness, Leviticus 20:11. It is derived from this verbal analogy that just as with regard to the prohibition, the verse renders his mother, who is not his father's wife, like his mother who is his father's wife, meaning both are forbidden. So too, with regard to the punishment, the verse renders his mother, who is not his father's wife, like his mother who is his father's wife. Im chahi mishum imoy atamachayvoy v'iyatamachayv mishum eshesav. It is derived from the phrase, she is your mother, Leviticus 18:7, that you render him liable due to the prohibition against engaging in intercourse with his mother. But you do not render him liable due to the prohibition against engaging in intercourse with his father's wife. The Braita ends here. Since the halachot in the collection of Braitot, where this Braita appears, Torat Kohanim, are in accordance with the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda, the Braita supports the opinion of Rava, who explains the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in this manner. V'Rabbanon elvas avicha mamish. The Gemara discusses the Braita asking, and how do the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Yehuda interpret the phrase, the nakedness of your father? The Gemara answers, they hold that this phrase is meant literally, meaning that it is referring to homosexual intercourse. They do not accept the verbal analogy from which Rabbi Yehuda derives that the reference is to intercourse with one's father's wife. Hi mi the Gemara asks, isn't this prohibition against homosexual intercourse with one's father derived from the verse, and you shall not lie with a male as with a woman? It is an abomination. Leviticus 18:22. The Gemara answers, the prohibition is stated specifically with regard to one's father in order to render him liable to bring two sin offerings for unwittingly and engaging in intercourse with his father. It's kind of far-fetched. Unwittingly engaging in intercourse with his father. How in the world does that happen? Not sure. Anyway. Rav Yehuda, and it is in accordance with the statement of Rav Yehuda, as Rav Yehuda says, a Gentile who engages in intercourse with his father is liable for committing two transgressions. Likewise, he who engages in intercourse with one's father's brother, oh my gosh. Likewise, one who engages in intercourse with his father's brother is liable for committing two transgressions. Bekolban, Ahai de kamanachli ishtamal yehu. The isal gedai technochli mamish. Dinoi maininu. Katola. Bat rikadli katale. Rava says it stands to reason that the statement of Rav Yehuda is with regard to a Jew who does this unwittingly, and the statement that he is liable for committing two transgressions concerns his liability to bring an offering, meaning he is liable to bring two sin offerings. And even though the fact remains that he said Gentile, it is a euphemism, as he did not want to attribute such a sin to a Jew. As if it enters your mind that the reference is literally to a Gentile, the statement that he is liable for committing two transgressions is meaningless. What is his punishment for such a transgression? It is death. Could you kill him twice? Rather, it must be referring to a Jew who acted unwittingly. Tanya nami hachi haba al aviv chayv shtayim haba al aviv chayv shtayim. This halacha is also taught in Braita. One who engages in intercourse with his father is liable for committing two transgressions. One who engages in intercourse with his father's brother is liable for committing two transgressions, as it is stated, "You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother," Leviticus 18:14. Ikadamri deloi kerav Yehuda. Some say this is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as in his opinion, there is no special prohibition against homosexual intercourse with one's father. It's just covered by the other prohibition. It's not unique. It's just it's covered by the general prohibition against homosexuality in general. He interprets the verse, "The nakedness of your father you shall not uncover," as referring to one's father's wife. Accordingly, one who engages in homosexual intercourse with his father or with his father's brother is liable only due to the general prohibition against homosexual intercourse. Like we were saying just before. B'ikadamri afilu teimar Yehuda ma'isilo v'kal v'choim yachi oviv u'ma'achi oviv dikova de'oviv chayv shtayim oviv likol shechein. And some say, you may even say, that the Braise is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and that he derives that there is a specific prohibition against homosexual intercourse with one's father by an a fortiori inference, that means a kal v'chomer, from the prohibition concerning one's father's brother. And the inference is as follows. If for intercourse with one's father's brother, who is merely his father's relative, one is liable for committing two transgressions. For intercourse with his father, is it not clear all the more so that he should be liable for committing two transgressions? Two transgressions! Mar savar onshin min hadin, umar savar en onshin min hadin. And the sages who provide these two interpretations of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion disagree with regard to the issue that is the subject of the dispute between Abai and Rava. One sage, I think it's Abai, when they say Chadamar, I think it goes the first and the second. One sage, meaning Abai, he of the second interpretation holds that one administers punishment based on a kal v'chomer inference, even with regard to the prohibition that is derived of the kal v'chomer, one who transgresses it is liable. And one sage, he is of the first interpretation, holds that one does not administer punishment based on an a fortiori inference. But we always go like Rabbi. Ein onshin min hadin. You don't give a punishment based on a kal v'chomer. If you can't give, it's for sure not. Yeah, that wouldn't be. That'd be a chomer v'kal. It has to be if you can't. Right. I think it's the other way around, yeah. V'Rabbanan azor leishes avi minalahu nafkelahu me'elvas leishes avicha lo sigale. The Gemara asks, and with regard to the rabbis who disagree with the opinion of Yehuda, from where do they derive the prohibition of intercourse with one's father's wife? The Gemara answers, they derive from the verse, the nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness, Leviticus 18:8. The Gemara asks, and what does Rabbi Yehuda derive from this verse? Since he derives the prohibition from the verse, the nakedness of your father you shall not uncover. The Gemara answers, that verse is necessary for the prohibition of one's father's wife after his father's death. Even though his father is dead, his father's wife remains forbidden to him. The Gemara asks, and from where do the rabbis derive that halacha? The Gemara answers, that halacha is derived from the last clause of the verse, it is your father's nakedness. The Gemara asks, and what does Rabbi Yehuda derive from that clause? The Gemara answers, that clause is necessary to reach the halacha that if one engages in intercourse with his father's wife, you render him liable to the prohibition against engaging in intercourse with his father's wife, but you do not render him liable due to the prohibition against engaging in intercourse with a married woman. V'hanan, it's like a certain form, it seems like it's a certain form of Kamlei Midrabane, perhaps? Like a conceptual form of it? I don't know. Thought that just came to me. V'hanan tenan v'haba aleishis aviv chayiv alea mishumeishis av shumeishis ish ben v'chayovid ben lachamisas aviv v'lepalagav Yehuda. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah, one who engages in intercourse with his father's wife? You know what? Let's take away from something from this. Intercourse. What's the Gemara of intercourse? 147. Years of Yaakov's life. One who engaged in intercourse with his father's wife is liable to bring two offerings, one due to the fact that she is his father's wife, and one to the fact that she is a married woman. And he is liable due to the former prohibition, both during his father's lifetime and after his father's death. The Gemara notes, and Rabbi Yehuda does not dispute this. So how can it be suggested that in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, one who engages in intercourse with his father's wife is not liable for engaging in intercourse with a married woman? Amar Abaye plig bebraiso. Abaye says he disputes this ruling in a Braita. Although it is not mentioned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda disputes this ruling, it is mentioned in a different source. Rabbanan onesh de'eshet aviv na'achal mita minalahu b'shlama Rabbi Yehuda ma'itila v'gzera shava Rabbanan minalahu. The Gemara asks, and as for the rabbis, from where did they derive the punishment from one who engages in intercourse with his father's wife after his father's death? Granted, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it is derived by means of a verbal analogy. But from where do the rabbis who do not accept the verbal analogy derive it? Amrilach, hahu ervat aviv gila, dimapik la Rabbi Yehuda gzera shava, mapkile inuhu leoinish de'eshet aviv lachamita. The Gemara answers, the rabbis can say to you that it is derived as follows. With regard to that phrase, he has uncovered his father's nakedness, from which Rabbi Yehuda derives a verbal analogy. They derive from it the punishment for one who engages in intercourse with his father's wife after his father's death. V'Rabbanan oynish li'imoy she'eno eshes aviv minalahu amar shisha berei Davidi amar cha imcha hi asah katuv li'imo she'eno eshet aviv ki imo shehi eshet aviv. The Gemara answers, as for the rabbis, from where do they derive the punishment from one who engages in intercourse with his mother, who is not his father's wife. Rav Shisha, son of Rav Edi, says the verse states, she is your mother. Leviticus 18:7. The verse renders the halacha of his mother, who is not his father's wife, like that of his mother, who is his father's wife. Haba al kalaso. Haba al kalaso. Haba al kalato. Habu al kalusoi. We have all gone to 564. Haba al kalasoi l'chayv nami mishum eshet beno. Amar Abaye פתח הכתוב בקלתו וסיים באשת בנו. לא אמר לך זוהי קלתו, זוהי אשת בנו. The Mishnah teaches with regard to one who engages in intercourse with his daughter-in-law, he is liable both due to the fact that she is his daughter-in-law and due to the fact that she is a married woman. The Gemara asks, and let him also be liable due to engaging in intercourse with his son's wife, as it is stated in the verse, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness. Leviticus 18:15. Abaye says, the verse begins with his daughter-in-law and ends with his son's wife to tell you that these are not two prohibitions. Rather, his daughter-in-law is his son's wife. They are one and the same. And that ends that. How much time do you have left here? Wow, we gotta fly. His son's wife. Oh yeah, they're one and the same. New Mishnah. הבעל זכור והבהמה והאישה מביאה אס הבהמה בסקילה אם אדם חטא בהמה מה חטא אלא לפי שבא לאדם תקלה על ידה לפיכך אמר הכתוב תסכל. דבר אחר שלא תהא בהמה עוברת בשוק ויאמרו זו היא שנסכל פלוני על ידה. The Mishnah says a man who engages in intercourse with a male or with an animal and a woman who engages in intercourse with an animal are executed by stoning. The animal is likewise stoned to death. The Mishnah asks, if the person sinned by doing this, how did the animal sin? Rather, because a calamity was caused to a person by it, therefore the verse states that it should be stoned so that it does not cause another to sin. Alternatively, it is so that this animal will not pass through the marketplace, and those who see it will say, this is the animal because of which so-and-so is stoned, and its existence would shame his memory. Okay? The Gemara, the Talmud says, Zachar min alan, the Tanavan ish, prat lekatan, asher yishka v'zachar, ben gadol ben katan, mishkavei isha, magid lecha kasuv, shishnei mishkavois b'isha. The Gemara says, from where do we derive the prohibition and punishment for homosexual intercourse with the male? It is as the sages taught in a Brayta with regard to the verse. And if a man lie with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Leviticus 20:13. The word man excludes a minor boy. The phrase lies with a male is referring to any male, whether he is an adult man or whether he is a minor boy. The phrase as with a woman, mishkavei isha, is referring to lying with a woman, appears in the plural. The verse teaches you that there are two manners of lying with a woman, for which one who engages in intercourse with a woman is forbidden to is punished, the front and from the back, right? Amar Rabbi Yishmael, harai zeh ba lelamed v'nimtza laman. Rabbi Yishmael says this phrase is written to come to teach about the punishment for homosexual intercourse, and the halacha that one is liable for the back door with a woman is who is forbidden to him is found to be derived from it. Mot yamutu b'skila. Ata omer b'skila o eino ela b'achat mikol mitot al-mut b'toire nemer kan demeim bom v'nidoini demeim bom maral b'skila avkan b'skila. The phrase they shall be put to death is referring to execution by stoning. Do you say that they are executed by stoning, or is it rather by one of the other types of death penalty that are stated in the Torah? It is stated there, their blood shall be upon them, and it is stated with regard to a necromancer and a sorcerer, their blood shall be upon them. Leviticus 20:27. Just as there the verse states that a necromancer and a sorcerer shall be executed by stoning, so to here they are executed by stoning.